on this, like, if it was dying, because your cells die and that's when you die. So the progenitor of life, all the cells in you want as much as you can, and the more they start taking over are fading in power. So there's like power, and then there's number, and power and numbers, and both of them together probably give that middle ground of what's like a buckyball shape to all these. A buckyball is a trick question. A buckyball is a shape that is so like big and complex and round, but then it's polygon-esque. All these characters at the highest degree. So then, if you would pick one material to relate all material, we're a material world, then you would pick like a buckyball because it shares those classical dynamics, the trifecta. But it's like, and you know, when they make those molecules in chemistry with those dots and bonds that the bonds are connected to, this is like how the buckyball would look like any of those finished molecular structures more than any other shape you could do. So if you're like betting, you could bet on the buckyball. And they explain it, and they're saying that it's more real than your actual body. They'll say they go to like heaven, like if they do this on videos online, it's more real than your actual body is on this planet, and so like it feels more real and your senses are heightened. So that, and when you're talking about time, literally, if you don't like that, when you die, the afterlife, time doesn't exist, and yet there's all these details and stuff, like your senses and the landscaping. So that must mean like information aside from what the creation of life is. And so then these two things, in hell it's without God, and yet everything is still operating. So it would be like this eternity. In this eternity, it's like with maximum amount of information, and it all coagulating to be perfect. This is what you think of when things are simulated in a video game with binary numbers. And instead of like the binary just being like pixel determinate, it's like these actual molecules, but they're all like perfect. So in heaven, everything's like these perfect shapes, and there's no depth of like corrosion in anything weathering. So the nature there is like sparkling, like at its top degree, like a buckyball. If it could match the likenesses of like any curve or V-shaped vector and molecules, it would be the top of its game. So like the best of the fruits, the best of the oils, all the plants and all that stuff, if there wasn't adjuvant and trash everywhere. On my bike, it's almost like my skin, the outside of it, because it has a surface. When a bike tire ruptures, it can be said that it's an experiment or an event that occurred. And if it was an event from point A to point B where something was ruptured, then it would be on its out. Shut the F up. And so it would be punctured on its outside. This whole thing with how a bike, it gets a hole. It's either one hole in the bike or multiple holes on its tire. And if it's just one hole, then you would hear a seep out of it. But I didn't hear a seep out of it till I knew to look for it. But right when I started to look for it, I noticed that it wasn't taking in any air. It was cold. I don't know. It got wet, and so it might have frosted and made the shape of the inner tube of the tire to be crinkled. And this is inside the shell of this rubber BMX metal or rubber on the outside. So first you have to pump so hard and make sure that the mouth of the pump is over the part that it goes and to blow up a tire. And so putting that over it, you have to push it out from the tire and make sure it's already over, because if it isn't over entirely, you can pump and it won't take in any air. And this is the same thing when you have an IV and your body's rejecting the water and they keep poking you. You want it to go through. But how can the tire be not getting in air? It's just like when you take a canoe, you pull it underwater and you can walk under it with the air pocket and breathe. Really hard to do, but nonetheless is the opposite of what my tire, I think, was experiencing when it got frozen shut in an odd position and I couldn't pump in any air. Once I did start pumping in the air, because I got the pumper's head over the nozzle of the inner tube tire, metal, looking like this kind of thing, nozzle. Well, there's threads of the nozzle, they got put over too. And if there's threads of nozzles in water, like a pipe with fluid, you want Teflon tape over these threads of the metal nozzle. But with air, you just have to pump enough and fill for a suction break, apply pressure. And so then, but that won't work unless, and you'll have to keep trying it until you get the nozzle covered with the pump head of the air pumper. And this is so important is because once you get the air in properly, it's gonna, you hear like air coming out and you hear that there's like a hole on the inner tube. And this is where it got punctured, like skin that was pinched or abrased. A pinching and a braise to a tear is almost the same thing. It's just like a how extreme is it? A jaywalk in an intersection, an oncoming car will have to treat the intersection like a exit on a interstate, and you're going like you have to go at least 90 miles per hour for this scenario, where a pinch and a tear in the skin is both the same as a inner tube tires hole getting punched and your blood not accepting water from an intake of an IV pinprick. It has to be at 90 degrees or 90 miles per hour for you in a car to make this turn, to make it relevant to an event from point A to point B, to make the car fully turn around. In this situation, relating the exit of a highway to an interstate where someone's jaywalking, and so they have to turn on a dime in this intersection to treat it like the exit on the interstate, and but they have to be going 90 miles per hour doing this, is equal to a certain density and shape of a this is why houses are important, the shape of them equal to the cast mold of other stuff, like a puppet stick if it were over the globe, kind of like what space trash is doing, but it's not condensed into a mold. If it were, it would be the equivalent to like a puppet crossbars hand mold that you hold on to, the stick puppet sticks. But yeah, so that shape would have to be a certain one so that the blood would accept the IV or wouldn't accept the IV if the shape is a certain shape, and if your density and fluidity of your pressure is moving in a certain, I guess they call it different viscosities, viscous states, kind of equal to pixel to cryptology, parent functions of each other. Yeah, that's about it. But no, the one takeaway is the flesh of your skin. How is that relatable to the snow surfaces? If snow could be generalized with it being just like the most yeah, what's your notice? If this was all lava, it would be looking like this. The most yeah, what's your common denominator for a codomain? It would be like not a buckyball, and yeah, probably a buckyball that equals up any like shape that has somewhat of these general definitions. They're called axioms. Like a buckyball would get a triangle in it because it has like two lines that come together like a vector, and that's always a relation because psi and tan and cosine are that relation of those vectors closing, and that's why pi, I think, is related to a circle or a sphere. And so, or if it was a Shakuzian that had a jet stream, it would be looking like some of these in a stable state, like at a freeze frame, but in motion, it would obviously be having to have the snow ripple like a jet engine, even though it's got this texture. It would have to have the in real-time motion to make the freeze frame do justice to being a actual